This is an 86 Jeep Wagoneer with a 6-liter LS swapped under the hood, and today we're building a custom exhaust for it. My goal for this system are for it to perform nicely, fit the chassis properly, and have a unique sound, which is admittedly a bit difficult when you consider the LS is the most commonly swapped performance engine on the planet. To accomplish this, I'm using my TIG welder, a box of mandrel bends, and a muffler I've never ever heard on a domestic V8, the Flowmaster DBX. I think and hope the customer will like the sound, but until we get the system built and fired up for the first time, it's anybody's guess. I already got a head start on the front half of the build, so I'll show you where we're at, as well as my process to build a 100% custom exhaust system from scratch. So you can see we kind of tucked things up close to the engine because the front drive shaft goes right through there, if it'll focus. That's where the front drive shaft goes. We got plenty of clearance. I had it in already before. This side we go around the starter, and it looks kind of tight from that angle, but if you get under here, you can kind of see it goes right behind it. There's our Y pipe there. That's another Flowmaster part. It's one of the more compact Y pipes, which I like, because the MagnaFlow Y pipes in that style, they're really, really wide, which makes them easier to weld, but in a tight situation like this where there's not a lot of space between the transmission and the frame, I really like these Flowmaster Y pipes, and from what I've read, they flow really, really well also. But they do put this paint on there, which I kind of hate because you've got to grind it off if you're going to weld it. So I may repaint this. We may just because this paint will burn off pretty shortly, so we'll probably just leave it actually. But anyway, that's the front half of the system. Got a catalytic converter in there, of course, to keep all the harmful emissions under control. So today I'll show you my process from here all the way to the back. We're going to hang a muffler. The back of the muffler will be here. We're going to snake out above the axle between the shock and the fuel tank. And then I think I want the tailpipe to run just under the frame. And right here at the bumper, we're just going to kind of tip it down. That way, if we're cruising with the windows down and people inside, all the exhaust is going to get, all the way to the back. So that's the goal for today. I want to hear this thing run, and I'm really excited, and I love exhaust. So let's get started, and I'll show you my process. Now I have cheated a little bit. I already know the angle coming out of this pipe is exactly where I want it. I just need the length of the straight shot into the muffler. I want the back of the muffler to sit about there, which means I need 23 inches of straight pipe. The abrasive chop saw, it does cut the pipe quickly, but it leaves a pretty nasty burr. In fact, you can cut yourself really easily if you're not careful. So to clean this up and prepare for welding, carbide on the inside and then just a sanding disc on the outside, and that kind of deburrs it. And then of course I use this little flap wheel type thing to smooth the inside and take just that surface layer of oxidation off. And then on the outside I use one of these little Scotch-Brite style pads just to make it all nice, and then of course wipe down with acetone. And for cleanup, we use acetone, not brake cleaner, because supposedly brake cleaner is bad for you if you weld with it. Something about chlorine gas. So now I've got to tack weld this straight section to my little jog over pipe. And realistically, the orientation of this pipe doesn't matter because we have two square cuts. So you could spin this around all day long and weld it anywhere. But details matter. Details matter. And I don't really like seeing the seam that's on these pipes because they're basically folded together and they're welded. And I just don't like seeing it. So I'll have that at the top, which is like right there. And if I can do this one-handed, I'll make a single mark like that. double check that the seam is on top, which it is. And now I can weld it together. All right, I'm just going to kind of test fit this before we do any final welding. And the only other thing that we have to make sure of is that the muffler, there's a seam on the bottom and there's some letters on the side. Of course, we want that to be even as well. So give her a little twist. I think that's where it's going to live. Did the rookie mistake, dip the tungsten, so now we shall fix it with a pencil sharpener. A perfectly mediocre weld. All right, moving right along here, and we have the first third and the middle third of the exhaust done. And I am really tempted right now to start this thing up just to kind of hear how it's going to sound. But we're going to hold off. We're going to wait till the very end with the tailpipe and everything before we actually get to hear how this thing sounds, because that's motivation to get things done. So front third, Y pipe, that's pretty much all done. I got to add another little brace on this hanger. This is just tack welded for now. We're going to have another one that kind of goes like that. The muffler, the rear hanger is installed kind of permanently in its home. And then really the last thing we have left to do, this is on the front third of the exhaust, is I've got to weld this. And the reason why I save this for last, and I'm going to do the same thing on the tailpipe, we'll get the tailpipe fully welded and this will be like the last weld we do on the system, is because this buys us a little bit of wiggle room or cheat room, because as we use these bends, you know, we cut them and we weld them together, there's really no room for error. Like let's say this angle, we're just like 1 or 2 degrees off. Here that might not make a big difference, but as it goes backward, you know, it'll be way up here, or it could be way down here. So to take advantage of that, or to prevent that rather, this gives us just a tiny bit of wiggle room, and then we'll get that all welded in place. And now that we have everything final welded, I'll just get this thing tacked in, then we'll remove it and finish weld it at the very end. But before I build the tailpipe, I'll just get, you know, as much of this welded as I can with it still in the truck. But yeah, I'm excited. I really, really want to hear how this thing sounds, but we're getting there. We're almost ready. First thing we got to do is kind of bend up and over the axle. I've got a 90 here, so all I am going to do is cut it in half, which will leave me 2 45s. Except I got a mark on the side that I can see. So now with two 45-degree bends, used to make a 90, all we got to do is turn them like that, and we have a bit of an offset. Now I can add some straight pipe in the middle to make that longer. I'll put it up under the truck and see how much we need. I might need a little more offset, but we'll find out. I think this bend will work, but it's too far out, so I need to have it go in about that much. So cut this off and be right back. All right, we get the pipe shortened and it kind of follows the contour of the frame a little bit nicer. And I get the other half of our bend. Ideally, I want it somewhere like here. We don't have to touch the floor. We'll leave a little bit of a gap, but to make that work, I need, we'll start off with a 4-inch section in between there. We might have to shorten it to like 3.5, but maybe even 3. We'll start with 3. I think that'll do what I need. I ended up trimming this several times. Initially I thought it was 3 inches. It's more like 1 1/4. That's the perfect length. So it's going to go up like that. The other half of our original 90 is going to sit something like that. And then I already am planning the next bend, which this is of course a 180, but it's going to sit something sort of kind of like that. So we'll get these two tacked together and then we'll work on the rest. You know, I see these little clamps on Instagram all the time and I really need to buy a set. But they're like just a band clamp with a vice grip that's perfect, or it's intended for holding pipes like this together while you tack weld them. I really need to get a set. But until then, masking tape gets the job done. All right, so we got our little jog over piece installed. I'm happy with the way that the dimensions of this came out. And I've got a 180 just kind of slipped in the back for now to judge how much length we need. As you can probably tell, it hits the back of that cross member there, so we need to shorten this leg a little bit. It's inside a slip coupler, which we do not use just because I think it's dumb. I prefer a butt weld over a slip coupling because all those little humps in the exhaust just looks stupid to me. Of course, they are acceptable in mufflers because that's the way that they come, and you know, catalytic converters. But everywhere else, we just have butt connection. So we'll cut this back. We'll work on that next angle. All right, so the idea is pretty simple. Basically, instead of welding with straight current controlled by your foot pedal, it's going to pulse it and limit heat input into the part, which should yield a little bit better finish. And also the rhythm will help me kind of time the dabbing to maybe make a little bit nicer looking finished product as well. All right, this is like the last one. All right, this is it. The very last piece of a very long puzzle. So just a little while later, we now have the exhaust 100% complete. And I am kind of flooded with a mix of emotions right now because on one hand, I'm really relieved that it's done and I'm really excited to hear how it's going to sound. But on the other hand, I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know if it's going to do what we need it to do. Now, in terms of performance, I know this exhaust is going to do exactly what it's supposed to do. We've got a really well-constructed system. It's going to fit perfectly. Nothing's going to rub. Nothing's going to melt. So in terms of functioning, it's going to be perfect. But how it's going to sound, that's the one thing I am still unsure of. And I'm nervous because I want to make sure the customer likes this. I don't want it to be too loud. I don't want it to be too quiet either because you've got to hear the LS rumbling and stuff. But there's always that chance and that thought in the back of my mind, because we're trying a muffler that I've never tried before, I don't know how it's going to sound, especially in terms of volume. So in a nutshell, we've got 2.5-inch mandrel bends, we get high flow Y pipe, high flow catalytic converter, 3-inch from the cat all the way back, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So the only thing we have left to do today is get this thing bolted back up into the truck, get the O2 sensor connected, because that's the one thing we didn't have hooked up yet with the Holly, where we're running it previously with open manifolds. And then let's hear how it sounds. We've now successfully smoked the shop out with all the paint burning off the exhaust and oils and stuff like that. I tried to clean it pretty good, but there's always stuff that burns out of exhaust. But I gotta say, I kind of like it. One of my reasons for choosing that particular muffler, the DBX, was just because I wanted something a little bit different. Everybody runs the Magnaflows and the Flowmaster chambered mufflers. And they sound okay, but I just wanted something that had a slightly different tone to it. And I think that we've accomplished that. And of course, the volume level I think is probably right where it needs to be. I don't think it's too loud. It's definitely not too quiet, but I like it. Personally, I think this is a vehicle with the volume level anyway. You could hop in this thing and cruise it down the freeway all day and it wouldn't get annoying. And then you could, drive through a drive-through, or you can have a conversation with someone in the front seat, and the volume level is gonna be not too obnoxious, because that's the one thing I can't stand with exhaust is when you go too loud, it's too obnoxious, it drones on the inside. And we're inside a building here, so I did have the door open, of course, but it kind of echoes a little bit. So I think once we're outside, it might be even just a touch quieter. So hopefully Randy, the owner of the Jeep, hopefully he approves of it. But yeah, I'm excited. So next time you guys see this, probably in the next video, we might be going for the very first test drive. There's a few things that we have left, like the shifter linkage. I just get a whip up real quick. We did a bit of throughout the process of building the exhaust, I kind of did like a nut and bolt final inspection. There's quite a few things we found that needed to be just tightened down. There's a few, you might have noticed over the tailpipe by the fuel tank, there's a couple of sections that I need to protect with some of that DEI fire sleeve with some rubber hoses. We'll take care of that. And then just, there's always that punch list when you finish a project, but this is like, we're in the home stretch. Building the exhaust was it was a lot of work, but it's done, and now we're just left with those little odds and ends. So test drive coming soon. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And come on back. All right, guys, this right here is my absolute favorite part of any build. Crossing stuff off the list.